There are three types of retirement plans that you want to consider. Now, it's very important that you understand these three different retirement plans because there are dramatically different actions that you'll take based on which type of retirement plan is right for you. I'm speaking specifically to people who are in what I call the retirement risk zone, which is within 10 years of their target retirement date. And the reason I'm specifying that is because if you're more than 10 years away from retirement, there's a whole different set of actions and considerations you need to kind of consider. But if you're within 10 years of retirement, you don't have that much time left to make things work. So let's jump right into the three different types of plans so you can understand and get an idea of where you're at and what actions you should consider. Welcome back to the channel. It's great to see you again. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Please, if you could take a moment and like this video and subscribe to the channel, we'd most appreciative. It'll make sure YouTube serves you other great videos just like this. And with that, we'll jump back to the video. The first type of plan is what I call the triage retirement plan. And that's what I have on the screen here. Any retirement plan where we plug in your base case information, which is just exactly what you have currently and what you're doing now. And you get a probability of success that is under 60%, like this one on the right here. And you have an under 60% probability of success, you are in what I would consider triage territory. This has its own set of items and actions. We'll go into those in a second. But the idea is we want to get someone who's within 10 years of retirement from a under 60% level of success to a 60% or higher level of success as the initial benchmark. That doesn't mean we stop at 60%. We just have to do this in phases because the trade-offs and requirements that you'll need to put into place in order to get from, let's say, 40% to 100 are going to be unrealistically difficult initially. And so it's better to break this into stages. Thus, the idea of three different types of retirement plans. You move sequentially from triage plan 1 to the second plan, which I'll show on the screen here now as well. And the second plan is what you'd call a stabilization retirement plan. This is if you have a 60% or higher level of success when you put in your base case information, and then you want to get from 60% to above 80%. We call that stabilizing. There's a whole set of actions that go along with that. Again, you move first from triage into stabilizing, and then from the second plan type here, you'd move to the third plan type, which is what we would call optimization. And an optimization plan is when you're above 80% and you're moving from 80 to 100, or you're in that very high 90 to 100% range. And again, you have your own specific set of action items here. Now, I'll make one quick point, and then what I'm gonna do is switch the screen and show you the hierarchy of action items or retirement planning actions that you can take based on which plan you're building for yourself. And this is very important. The idea here being, you don't want to run before you can walk. If you are in a 60% or lower probability of success and you start doing things like making plans for charitable giving, start doing tax planning items that bring forward costs and expenses into the present day that you could have deferred till later, you are putting your plan at significant risk. You're running before you can walk, right? So that's the idea of presenting this. Now, there's nothing wrong with being in the triage phase, the stability phase, or the optimization phase. You just are where you are. What you have to do is take honest assessment of where you are and then implement the proper action items to get you from plan phase 1 to plan phase 2 to plan phase 3 sequentially in order in a way that doesn't discourage you, make it too painful, or make it so that you quit entirely. So what are the actual action items that go into each phase? Okay. Tier 1 actions, this is how I label them when we think of them at our practice here. Tier 1 actions are what you'd call the biggest movers. They're like light switches. I think of it as there's radio dials where you tune from a 0 to a 10 and anywhere in between, and then there's light switches. Light switches, you flip the switch and the thing works. Tier 1 actions move you from triage into stability. And there's basically 4 action items. There's work longer, so you can push out your retirement date. Let's say you're not a strong saver or haven't been a great saver, then you just don't have a lot of flexibility. Well, you can push your retirement date further out. That makes it so you need to rely for fewer years on your retirement savings, and therefore your retirement savings can last you longer, so to speak. Then there's spend less before retirement. That could also say save more before retirement. You can only spend money in retirement if you've saved money before retirement, for the most part. Obviously, you'll have Social Security and other little things, but forget that. If you're looking to have a comfortable, not spending constrained retirement, the idea is you have to save in the present day because you're saving for your future self. The ways you can save more before retirement are either cutting expenses or increasing your income, which you can see here is item number 4 on this list. Those are difficult to do. They require significant behavior change, but if you're within 10 years of retirement and you're seeing a plan probability under 60%, it means your plan's likely not going to work, or it's an uncomfortable probability to rely on. You do need to make significant changes to your lifestyle, and spending less before retirement or figuring out ways to supplement your income and therefore save more are big movers. The next item here, and I don't even like including this on most lists, but I'll explain it real briefly, is spending less in retirement. So the effect of spending less in retirement is your retirement assets last longer, right? So you spend less, they last longer. The problem is it relies on a future gamble or a future commitment you make to yourself that you're not sure you'll be able to live up to. So basically the idea is you might say, hey, I don't want to spend less pre-retirement. I can't save more. I can't make more money. I'll spend less in retirement. The problem is you don't know what the circumstances will be in retirement. You don't know what your health will be. You don't know what inflation will cause. You don't know how much things will cost, where you'll live, and you're making a really risky future gamble or future commitment that you might not be able to live up to. But it is an option, and in a retirement planning tool, you can tune that dial. I just think it's not a great option. And then you have this fifth one here, which is a hybrid of all the above. You could mix and match these. You could work slightly longer, spend slightly less before retirement, spend slightly less in retirement, or try to make more money. These are triage items. This type of stuff, if you're within 10 years of retirement and under 60%, this is the type of stuff you're going to have to consider. There's no negotiating this. If you're within 10 years of retirement and you haven't been a strong saver, you're going to have to consider these 5 things. Now we move to plan type 2, where we have what I call tier 2 actions. And these are stabilizing actions. These are where you're already at a 60% or higher plan probability. You're within 10 years of retirement. You're probably going to have a substantial or some reasonable amount of assets. And now you can start thinking about these types of softer tactics. We would have changes to your pre-retirement investment allocation. That might mean taking on more risk, taking on less risk. Don't know right now, but it's making changes to your investment allocation to slightly adjust for future returns on your investments. Then type 2 action number 2 would be changing your post-retirement investment allocation. This would be things like maybe changing to a bucket strategy or having some kind of downside protection after you retire that reduces the volatility, because retirement is all about cash flow. And what you want to do when you're close to retirement and you have a reasonable probability of success is you want to insure, I-N-S-U-R-E, insure your retirement by protecting your cash flow. So having a different pre-retirement allocation and a post-retirement allocation and a plan for that can help. The third, and probably the most impactful on this list, is optimizing your Social Security claiming. So basically, most cases it's going to be deferring your Social Security so that you can grab the largest income amount from Social Security, which provides you an income floor and is basically a guarantee or a support system so that you draw less from retirement assets because Social Security contributes more. And then the last item on this list is what I call a dynamic distribution strategy, and that's having a spending plan in retirement that matches how you'll take money out of your assets and gives you rules for how you'll respond to market conditions or economic changes. These 4 are softer items, and they're not going to move the needle on your plan probability significantly. So some people that are in the low 60% in this type 2 plan will probably need a combination of tier 2 actions and tier 1 actions, because you might still need to increase your amount of savings in order to feel comfortable with your probability of success in retirement or how much money you'll be able to spend in retirement. The last action here, this is what I call the goods, the greats to have, but they're kind of, these are the small, they don't really move the probability of success in your retirement. What they do are they're things you earn because you've been a great saver and your probability of success is very high. And so now you can focus on these things. A good example of this is it doesn't make a lot of sense to think about charitable giving if you don't have enough money to support your own family's needs in retirement. If you're going to end up eating tuna fish and living in a trailer or living on the streets, you can't really think about giving money to charity. So what you do here is when you move above that 80% range in probability of success, which is a really comfortable range of success, now you can start thinking about these nice to haves. And this is where you do things like Roth conversions, which is where you pay tax now on certain investments in order to move it into a tax-free bucket so that either at a later stage in life, you can get tax-free money without having to pay a potentially higher tax rate, or your heirs can get tax-free money when they inherit it when you pass, which is actually truly beneficial for heirs. You have to have a substantial enough amount of retirement savings or leftover money at the time of passing for that to be even worth considering. You also have investment-specific distributions, which is where you can cherry pick different types of investments or locked-in gains in order to optimize for how the money arrives out in a tax manner. That's very complex. We won't get into that in this video, but it's a nice to have thing. You do that if your probability of success is high enough. Then you have charitable giving, which you've already talked about. That only makes sense if you have substantial enough assets to support your basic needs And above that point, you can now start to think about how can I be generous with my wealth to people other than my family. And the last item here is legacy planning. Now, legacy planning has both an element of protecting your heirs, and you should do that at all tiers or all plan types. That would include things like a will or a trust. Even if you don't have extremely substantial assets, you still want to think about this. But we get into more complex legacy planning where we're starting to think about more complex trusts and tax the ways our heirs will inherit assets or money in tax consequences of that. And that matters more when we have more substantial assets and are in this 80% or higher range. So I hope you found this video helpful. It's a good way to frame and think through a sequential manner of moving through retirement plans so that you can actually act on things and not feel overwhelmed, wondering where your status is. As a summary or capper point here, the main thing you have to do is always get a baseline or a diagnostic first to figure out what probability of success you have if you were to change nothing. And that's what these types of Monte Carlo simulations and retirement planning tools can be useful for. As always, thanks for your time and attention watching today's video. Before you take off, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section below. We answer every comment that's written. If you'd like to speak with our fee-only fiduciary financial planning team, you can schedule a free consultation on our website at www.thepeakfp.com. You can also find a ton of additional helpful guides, including a sample financial plan, a sample 3-bucket strategy, and much, much more on the website at www.thepeakfp.com, which we'll link to in the description below. Thanks, and see you in the next video.